Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hotdish podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is what's hot in Dynamics. You're now joining Merlin Schweiger, Liz McGlennon, and Ashley Steiner.
Okay, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Well, today we have Kyle Young. He's the Principal Program Manager, Growth Leader for D365 Field Service at Microsoft. So welcome, Kyle, and we're so glad to have you here. My first question for you is just if you can share a little bit about your background and how you got started in your career.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Liz. I've been around a little while. I've been at Microsoft just short of 25 years now. It's amazing to think about that. That's a long time. And I had worked at a couple of other companies for a short period of time before that. So when I came to Microsoft, I was recruited as basically a startup group that was working on an early internet online service. It had to do with viewing your bills online and paying them online, which now we just take for granted. But back in those days, things have changed just a little bit in the internet for viewers who don't realize that. Things have changed just a bit in that 25 years. And so it was just a kind of a really interesting experience in those pretty early internet days to be building an online service and thinking about all the things that you have to do and being able to securely view statements and make secure payments. And so we worked with billers and banks. And anyway, so I started there, and I've been since then at Microsoft. I've worked on just a variety of areas, largely around online services. So some work in the MSN team, some work on web services and interoperability. I spent some time on online authentication, what is now Microsoft ID. It had previous names when I was on those. And then I've been in the business applications dynamic space for 11 or 12 years, last few years.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm sure that was very exciting and cutting edge that you're one of your previous, you're that startup. And it looks like you have more of a technical or dev background too. I saw that you have some dev manager experience and stuff like that prior to Microsoft.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, don't ask me to explain the or to remember exactly all the things we were working on back in the day. But yeah, I did have some developer background.
That makes sense.
By your progression through Microsoft. So how did that look moving from team to team, and how did you take those steps forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes those are, so part of that was deliberate. I said, I looked at one area and I said, hey, it's time for a change, and I sought after it. Other times groups and things kind of morphed and changed, and you have interactions with other groups, and some, and there were times when somebody said, hey, you'd be a good fit over here. Do you want to take a look at that? Mostly it was largely about, okay, am I succeeding where I'm at? Am I doing a good job here? And then it seemed like if you kind of focusing on that, it seems like the opportunities kind of help present themselves, kind of keep your eyes open and so forth. So I don't know if there's an exact map or exact guidance on, precisely how to navigate that, but, do a good job where you're at, keep your eyes open, build good relationships across the other groups and so forth. And that seems to be a reasonable formula for success.
I'm curious. Awesome. Going similar to that question, when you were given an opportunity to shift roles or move roles, did you ever feel like it was a risk or a challenge or something that maybe you weren't totally qualified for?
Yeah, sometimes when I moved to the team that was doing web services and interoperability, it was a very I had some overlapping knowledge and skills, but it was a very different role than what I'd been in the past. And it's actually interesting because when you talk interoperability, a lot of that was actually collaboratively working on things with companies who are our competitors. So it's that one was, for me, that was a very interesting shift. And it's like, okay, so I talked with the guys that I knew, some of them on the the team there. It's like, okay, what does it take to succeed? What are the risks? What are the challenges and so forth? So that one was, challenged a bunch of different skills that I had. So that was a little bit risky, I thought, but it was enjoyable. I learned a lot from that experience.
Ashley, it sounded like you had another question there.
Nope, it was along the same lines.
Okay.
All right, fair enough. So then when Microsoft acquired Field One for their field service stuff, did you jump into that right away, or did you sort of join after?
Yeah, so I was on the team that was working on project service automation back in the day. And so we were just starting to build out project service automation. And so I owned some areas on PSA. And as field service came into the family, or in the form of Field One, it was clear that there was some very interesting overlap. It is actually an area that I had a bunch of interest and passion, and I'd always been pretty fascinated, interested in the field service area. And so when so at some point organizationally, those two products were brought together. I had the opportunity to go help lead out on the field service side, transition from Field One, and then I spent my time. I've been, since then, it's been almost 6 years actually since the Field One acquisition. So then I've been focused primarily on that since just after the acquisition point.
Nice. That's I actually didn't realize it had been that long. So I guess
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, wow, time flies.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember that like it was yesterday. So I guess over those 6 years, how have you seen the product evolve into kind of what it is today?
Yeah, it's been a major transformation, of course. And I mean, some of the good parts, Field One came in with a great foundation for us to get into the field service business. Not only the technically, but also we have a bunch of really knowledgeable people, some of whom are still on the team. Some of them are my very, close friends and coworkers that I got to know as they joined Microsoft. And so that, that formed a really strong basis. But beyond that, we knew that we had to make major investment and major transformation in the product. And so if you look at where we're at from scheduling and adding, RSO and automated and optimized scheduling, and lighting up field service with IoT for connected field service, and then bringing mixed reality into this. We think of a remote assist of field service as just, kind of part of the same solution. And one thing that's been kind of a long investment is having first-party mobile app for those that have watched that space, and having that third-party dependency. And so we now have this first-party app built on Power Apps, and we have customers that are starting to implement that, and we're learning and iterating. But that's going to be a great solution going forward. Adding end customer experiences, or C2 experiences, so portal functionality. We just recently released the tracking for technicians, a technician ETA and location, and our first foray and our first party capability for self-service scheduling. We added inspections. Inspections is a really important area in field service space. That's been really key. And then the other thing that's happening too is just the cohesion with the other apps, and that's really important. So cohesion with sales and customer service, and increasingly with finance and operations and supply chain. That's all really key. And so then we've seen just, and I remember as we were so excited on the dashboards early on when we saw certain usage numbers. I won't say exactly what they were, but they had less zeros than they have today. And then seeing now, the growth, we have now like major enterprises that have rolled out field service globally, and huge number of users. And so that's a huge growth. And then last year we were recognized by Gartner as a leader in the Magic Quadrant for field service, which that's a big accomplishment. And so it's been effort across the team to get to this, and customers who are adopting, and partners who make that ecosystem work. So it's been quite a journey and transformation since the early days of the acquisition.
It's actually really cool that you've been able to see it all the way from the beginning. It sounds like you were part of that whole journey.
Yeah, I did. I got to be involved in some of the first early drill downs with the Field One team, starting to learn the product and learning all the nuances and so forth, and starting to get deeper knowledge around the industry. So yeah, it's been pretty rewarding to see that come to fruition. Still got lots to do. We've got lots of ambitions. I can talk about some of those, but we've made really good progress over the last few years.
Yeah. So before we talk about like the ambitions and things that are potentially on the roadmap, maybe we can get a sneak peek. How are companies commonly using field service today? What's the most common use, and what benefits are they receiving from it?
Right. Yeah. In fact, that was one of the most interesting things as I got deeper into the field service space, was understanding and seeing all the variety of scenarios. And so anytime if you kind of step back and you think about, you've got somebody with a given skill set, and you've got demand of work that needs to be done, and it's typically location centric. So on site, or it's customers coming into a service center location. So geography is important. And when you have that kind of scenario, and then you're sending those frontline workers out or technicians out with a mobile application to succeed, and get things right the first time and make the customer hugely satisfied, that's how we think about, that's basically a field service scenario. So the canonical scenario that everyone's laughed about over the years is the cable guy, and the window of 8 to 5, and that kind of thing. And so that's the aspiration, is to make that kind of an experience just a much, much better experience, reliable experience, and so forth. And so to kind of give you some examples, so one very prominent example, it's probably not too surprising, is manufacturing. And so whether that be a manufacturer that targets B2C products or B2B products, we have a rich set of customers in both of those camps. But they build the product, they sell the product, and then they offer ongoing service. And increasingly, those guys are focusing and seeing their financial future more tied to that lifetime relationship with the customer and doing ongoing service than they do like, hey, I'm making a one-time sale. And so you're seeing that evolve, right? So manufacturing. Another area is facilities management. Even Microsoft, at our group that manages our facilities, uses field service for receiving issues that come in from tenants of a facility or a building, scheduling work, making sure work orders get dispatched and get done. Technicians are running around our buildings with the mobile app, closing off work orders. And so we see facilities management, and that can apply to a broad set of types of customers. We have financial institutions that manage their facilities that way. We have retailers that use field service in the course of managing facilities. Others are retailers who sell products or who offer in-home services around their products, and scheduling those and scheduling that after sales service. So retailers is another area. We have just kind of general purpose service providers, like guys who do security, both home or commercial, HVAC, home services, on-site services, there's just a broad set of those types of things, and even healthcare providers. So home health, and so in some cases, it's providing respiratory services and oxygen and all of the equipment that goes with that. Other cases, it's providing nurses or healthcare providers that actually go into homes. And one thing you'll notice is that these start to ladder up and line up to the industry clouds that Microsoft is working on. So whether it be financial services, we have a sort of scheduling component of that, or the health cloud, home health and scheduling, field services is a part of that. It'll be a part of manufacturing, obviously. So anyway, those are some of the scenarios. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said frontline workers. Obviously, we're in a state where, with COVID and everything, have you guys seen an increase in people needing it and the demand?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, starting last March, we started tracking, and some of our customers, as lockdown started to happen, we just saw the usage just drop off, just to hit a cliff, and so they were, unable to really conduct a lot of their business. But at the same time, we actually saw other organizations that were spiking up. And so organizations that were offering like in-home services versus in-person services, where you are able to isolate and service more carefully, services that were focused on like security inspections and cleanliness and that kind of thing. We saw them spike up during that time. And so we've seen I think a pretty big adjustment. And I think what our customers have it's helped them to figure out is like, okay, what can I do remotely? Like, where can I offer customers self-service options, so I don't need to have somebody there? Where can I offer, how can I schedule appropriately so that I, have minimal impact to the end customer, minimal impact to the frontline worker, to the technician. We've seen a bunch of work around that. And then just kind of a heightened awareness of where people are at and when they're there and so forth, to protect both customers and and the technicians. So yeah, it's been a pretty interesting evolution. One thing that it is interesting though is that as we've seen customers continue to to invest and try and innovate and transform, in some cases as of necessity, as part of the part of the pandemic response, and then in other cases I think they're seeing an opportunity to say, we can actually rethink how we do things. This is forcing us and causing us to rethink. So I think we're seeing a transformation that's driven by that as well.
I know it's a unique position we're in right now, but it's really cool to see how people are responding using technology.
Yeah, and frankly, I always think about the frontline workers. I call them the heroes of the field service scenario, and they really are. Thinking about, and they're the business, and so we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we equip them, how do we make them better, and they're becoming this kind of an increasingly scarce resource when you look at the aging patterns and the demographics and different skill sets with the younger workers and so forth. So helping them to be the most effective is, that's probably job one from a field service perspective.
That's awesome. Okay, so the next question is that everyone's always eager to learn more about the roadmap. So Kyle, what's the most exciting thing that you can tell us that's on the roadmap?
Yeah. So let me just frame it just slightly. We think about kind of four different buckets of investment. We think about the end customer as a part of that, and you can imagine our kind of digital feedback loop wheel that is quite popular in Dynamics presentations. And so, end customer and their experience. Then we think about the technician or the frontline worker and investment in those areas. We think a lot about assets, and it has really its own category, because quite often there are things that get serviced, and having a good understanding and even visual understanding and a data stream on those assets, and having those assets become increasingly smart with IoT data, with modeling, with digital twin to understand, what the asset is and how it fits in relationship to others. That's an important area. And then kind of the fourth area we call just optimizing service operations. And so that has to do with scheduling and looking at achieving KPIs and integrations, and also making the product that much more adoptable. So some of the things that that's kind of those are the four areas. So we continue to invest in those four areas. One of the things that's front of mind for us right now is simplifying use and adoption. And so when we have a rich product that does lots of things, but not everybody needs all of those things, and they don't need to start with all of those things. And so how do we make it easier? So how do we make it easier for end customers to learn about the product and do some self-adoption? And how do we make it, how do we transform what partners are focusing on, instead of like the nuts and bolts of lighting up this feature and turning on that feature and configuring that? It's like, well, let's just get that working out of the box, and then partners can focus on value add of actually how do customers improve their process, or how do they best apply the technology and so forth. So that's an important area for us. We will continue to we're going to continue to invest heavily in some of the advancing technologies like IoT and mixed reality. You'll see us bringing more mixed reality functionality right into the field service product, like remote assist functionality. We will continue on our frontline worker investment, our mobile application, and helping the technician succeed. And then one of the things we're focusing on as well is really highlighting and making available some of the non-traditional frontline worker scenarios and well, even non-traditional field service scenarios all up. So for example, equipping frontline workers with modern capability, even if you're not changing out the back end of your field service, even if you're keeping your scheduling and your work order and dispatch, how do you help to modernize those technicians? Leveraging the new mobile app and some of those capabilities. Leveraging like inspections, for example, there are a lot of different motions where people are just going out and doing inspections. And it's not, guys people carrying around tools and fixing and that kind of thing, but there's just a lot of scenarios and when you need to send somebody out to look at an asset, to get the current state of the asset and, provide expertise around that. And then scheduling, leveraging the scheduling functionality in a standalone way. We already have some examples of that. We have financial institutions, like I mentioned earlier, that take advantage of scheduling. But any time when you've got a set of resources with skill sets and locations, and you're trying to match that with customer needs, that's a scenario that matches our scheduling functionality. So anyway, so that's kind of a glimpse, if you will, at the roadmap, a little look at where we're going.
It's good. I like that you mentioned that you're trying to make it a little bit easier to deploy the product out of the box, just because my own sort of impression and experience with field service is, okay, you deploy it and then you spend the next like month and a half fidgeting with all the little entities in there to make it actually work. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And we want that to start from the trial experience, day one, the 5-minute experience, and all the way through like your 100-day experience. We want to make that kind of, from that trial onward, a much more consumable, adoptable experience. And you may eventually get to all of the tweaks that you talk about, Merlin, but let's not put that in front of starting to get advantage, value from the product. And so getting quicker time to value, whether it's on the trial or whether it's on as you start to implement and so forth, that's very important. We think that that's really key to ongoing growth and adoption of the product.
Yeah, it makes sense. Stand it up so that it works and then tweak it as you go along.
Yeah, exactly. Start to get success, start to get value and evolve as need be.
So the my next fun question is sort of the challenge question.
All right.
What keeps you up at night? What are you most concerned about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, as I think about how to grow the product and so forth, part of it is work that we need to do in the product, like for adoption and easing adoption and those kind of things. And then the other thing is just is just kind of getting everybody aligned and understanding the value of this. And so are our customers seeing the value and understanding and knowing what they could take advantage of, and are we sure that we're hearing them correctly and getting the right feedback and so forth, because I think ultimately from a growth perspective, having successful customers is probably the biggest factor that we can do in terms of helping to grow future success. So we build, we have more customers succeed. We have more evidence that both, word of mouth in the industry as well as, public customer evidence that's out there. That's really important. So just kind of making all of that line up, those are some of the things I guess that I end up focusing on.
What's the best way that you receive feedback today on like how people, is it just the numbers of people using, or do you guys have a channel for people to communicate to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a bunch of telemetry about how the product is being used. We have also measures on, the sales, the success of the product and how it's selling and so forth. And we get a constant feedback loop back from the field and partners, which is all great. We have the ideas portal. And so we get ideas back from end customers and partners there, which is a great feedback. We do in product, we capture satisfaction measures in the product, right? You guys have seen those prompts. And so, and we get comments from that. And so we pay a lot of attention to what's happening there. Like what, are the customers, are they happy with the product, satisfied or dissatisfied? What are their comments about it and so forth? So there are a variety of, feedback mechanisms. fortunately, that's great, because it's awesome to get as much signal as we can about how the product's doing and what else what more we should be doing or what we should be doing differently.
That's good to know that somebody rates those, because I usually just click them closed. Now I'll start filling them out.
Yeah, see, yeah, and I'll tell you where to click if that's helpful. So.
Awesome. Well, our last fun question, I'm really excited that I'm the one that gets to ask this. So obviously our podcast is named the Dynamics Hotdish.
Yes.
So it would be a shame if we did not ask you what your favorite hot dish is. And if you don't know what a hot dish is, it's the Midwestern word for a casserole.
Oh, casserole. Excellent. Well, we have one that our family makes, which is, it's sometimes referred to, unfortunately, as funeral potatoes, but it's a mixture of potatoes and creamy chicken soup and sour cream with cheese and cornflakes on top. And so that happens to be one of our family favorites.
That sounds really good.
It sounds delicious.
Yeah. Well, we need to get together when all this craziness is over and everybody bring their favorite one.
Have a potluck.
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Great. Well, thank you again so much, Kyle, for joining us today. Is there anything else that we didn't ask that you think should be the community would want to know about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would just like to just share my thanks and gratitude for our customers who take a bet on our products, for partners that that make that happen, the ecosystem, and just the way that this whole Dynamics community, with the goal of making sure that helping business to be successful. So I just would give my thanks out to the community for everybody that helps make all that work.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So Ashley, what was the most interesting thing you learned from that?
So the thing that I appreciated the most that he talked about is making field service easier to implement. And I know, Marilyn, you chatted with him quite a bit about that, because I always think of a field service as like a very long implementation, costly, you have to set up everything before you can start using it. It's not like sales where you can like implement certain pieces and then continue to add. So I was actually really excited about that. I think that's going to be a huge game changer.
Yeah, me too. Well, and like I said, that's why I commented on it specifically to him, is because I feel like today, if somebody's like, oh, I'd like to implement field service, my mind immediately goes to, okay, $250,000 just to start. Like, let's just start at 250K.
And that's the lowest option.
Right. And that's a huge hurdle for anybody
Right.
who wants to take advantage of that functionality. So I think the ability to like actually just turn it on and kind of use it out of the box, like you can with most of the other modules, I think would be a huge step forward. And then of course, you can always go in and change stuff, because like you're always going to go in and change stuff, but to just have it work right away will be a huge step.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad he brought that up, and that's something that Microsoft's aware of, and that you asked more about it, Marilyn, because I agree. And something that like resonates for me is because Tom, my husband's in HVAC and they do digital marketing. Like, they're small and they're SMB. And so they're working with all of their clients that use Service Titan because they could never afford Dynamics. And so to know that Microsoft's working on the SMB field service option, I think is awesome and important.
Yeah. And I feel like the other cool side is all the like AR, VR, like, you put on your HoloLens and your remote assist stuff. And I don't know.
I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Like, do people actually use that though? Like in real life, have you ever had like a tech come to your home and be like, here's a VR, AR machine?
I haven't yet, but I have gotten to play with the HoloLens.
And
there is actually a video of me somewhere on the internet from
Don't tell us that, Merlin. We'll find it.
I know, of me doing like a whole demo with the HoloLens on, and I'm like tinkering around in my own furnace while my colleague is on the Teams meeting, like giving me fake directions.
we're gonna have to post a link to that now in the show notes.
I know.
Yeah.
If we can find it, we can post a link to it. But it's like, it is a really cool technology, and I like, you could, as an organization, invest in that technology instead of investing in lots of very experienced field resources. I feel like that's where the switch is. And I think most of the companies, like most of your HVAC vendors out there today, like the people that they send out into the field to fix things are already pretty experienced, know what they're doing because they have to be. Like those are the only guys that you can hire to send out into the field, or gals, apologies. But with the HoloLens, like you can put this thing on your head and you'll feel kind of foolish because you look kind of foolish. But you can put this thing on and have one expert sitting in the office helping like 5 or 6 people out in the field at different times to be like, okay, yeah, you see that wire right there? And you just like put an arrow on it. You don't have to try to describe it. You just literally point at the thing on their screen. They're looking through the HoloLens at it. They see an arrow appear in the air, just like this one. Change this one.
So,
it's really
sorry,
cool.
Marilyn, finish that.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I wonder if that's gonna, like, they always say that the workforce is aging, right? Especially like the people that are in blue collar positions, you know, that come out to our houses, right, and do work like on
The trades.
or the trades.
Yeah.
It's that is an aging workforce, and there's just not as many millennials or even Gen Y, I think, joining that workforce. So I wonder if that'll become more popular as there's fewer experts, but people that could still complete the job with the direction.
I think it's going to have to, because there is already such a skill shortage in all those industries. And if you think about it, those are jobs that are manual labor and also like hard on you physically. And so like you're less likely to work to a super old age, I think, in a profession like that. And so I think it's going to have to, that, or you're going to have to make the trades more appealing to the younger generations, which, I mean, it's not today.
The technology might make it, though.
Make it more appealing.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder if Microsoft is just so far ahead seeing this gap that we're not seeing it, but they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're planning for the future, and it's not reality, like everyday stuff yet, but 10 years from now, maybe.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the coolest part of sort of playing with some of that augmented reality, virtual reality stuff is like, it sounds like it's all science fiction. And you think like, okay, but does it really work? Like, does it actually do that? And having played with it for like a couple of days, it's actually pretty cool. And it's actually really like good. Like I got markup like on my furnace, and you can like walk away and come back and it's still there. Like in this virtual space, somehow the HoloLens can like figure all this stuff out. It's actually like the technology is pretty sweet. So
interesting. And I think we're thinking about it from like a B2C and like consumer perspective, but I'm sure there's a role for it to play in like just within a business too, with fixing or repairing or maintaining things, like internal processes that could use it.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft's got like some marketing videos about, you know, the remote assist. And it's kind of that scenario where there's like a technician like goes out on the floor of the giant manufacturing facility and she's like, okay, well, I tried the basic troubleshooting steps and that's not working. So like, I better call the expert, and the expert walks her through it. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a furnace in somebody's house. It could be stuff on the floor. It could be an oil rig in the middle of the ocean. You know, like that's another great scenario where you've got like a totally remote and isolated environment. If you put one HoloLens device on that oil rig, then anybody on that rig can pick the thing up and put it on their head and be like, okay, walk me through how to fix this thing without having to like helicopter in an expert.
Yeah, like connect to any expert anywhere in the world.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Anything else that you guys like took away from what he had
Well,
said?
he brought up the first party mobile app, and I think that's a big deal, and I want to Google it in case I get it wrong, but I think everyone has to be switched to it by spring of 2022, like June of 2022, I want to say. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that's a big change.
Yeah, it is. And I guess I haven't played with the first party app in a little while, but as he said, they're investing in it a lot. So I assume it's another one of those areas that's like rapidly improving on like a month over month basis.
I also really appreciated his, you know, the stories of how people are using it, because you don't think of like the frontline workers, like they need this technology to work in order to do their job, especially we would never consider it until you come to a time like the pandemic. in the time of COVID where you're locked down or where you need more technology to complete the job. So I actually really appreciated that connection to kind of just today, what we're experiencing.
Yeah, that's true. That was a great conversation. I'm glad it came in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hotdish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at Dynamics Hotdish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.